Alright, what's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Daily Dungeon Diving. As you can see, we are on our way to the Dungeon of the Forsaken for our third run-through of the dungeon, and I've learned a couple of things over the course of the last two runs. I've gone through all the video footage, and I've counted out a number of enemies and various other things, and the main thing that I've learned is that the first time I went through, I faced 159 enemies. And the second time I went through, I actually faced 173 enemies. So, given that it's a small sample size, the basic ballpark right now looks like it's about 160 to 170 enemies in the dungeon. Now, of those 160 to 170 enemies, only 10% of them, roughly speaking, only 10% of them are Forsaken or Desecrators, which means the large, vast majority of the enemies that we fight in the dungeon are going to be the Plague Spawns, the Leprous Soldiers, and the Possessed. Now, let me go ahead and grab my notebook with all my armor numbers and such. But if you look at my inventory here, obviously I'm bringing some different things. I'm going to try out a different strategy, which is why I've started this recording a little bit before I actually get there. Now, we've been going at it mostly with this for armor. The Tier 3 chest and the Tier 3 legs, which gives me 170 armor. Now, I don't have exact numbers for all of the enemies. I do know that the Possessed have a base attack of 10. I'm not really sure about the soldiers or the Plague Spawns. The Plague Spawns do a lot of damage mostly with their poison, and the poison ignores armor. So the armor is kind of irrelevant. However, Damned, they do 9 damage at base. So I figure I'll use them as a basic example. So at 170 armor, the Damned that normally do 9 damage will instead do 4 damage. Which is, actually looking at the other things, yeah, 170 armor is just about 50% damage reduction. Looks like it's about a little less than 50%, just under. However, if I turn in my notebook to the proper page here, unfortunately my numbers are a little bit all over the place. There we go. If I take a look at what we have here, with Tier 1 tops and bottoms, we have 50 armor, and what that does is it takes a damned attack from 9 all the way down to 6. So we get about a 33% reduction in damage as opposed to 50%. But if you look at what it takes to make them, I mean, all of this is stuff you can get off of the enemies in the dungeon here. They drop plenty of flax fiber, they've dropped cloth, they even drop rope to a lesser extent. Whereas the Tier 3 tops and bottoms, they require a bunch of leather, they require a bunch of thick cloth, and they require copper. And I would argue that the damage reduction that we are getting on the weaker enemies is relatively minimal considering the cost that it takes to make this armor. Because I've been going through all of my footage, and I'm going through probably 3 sets of armor doing full clears here. Now, obviously, not everyone is going to be doing full clears. A lot of people are just going to make their way to the main loot cache, and then they're going to grab that, and that'll be it for them. They won't bother to clear every single enemy. Especially if it's just a dead-end room with no chest in it. They're like, why would I bother? And I can understand that. I really do. Of course, I'm trying to collect data. I'm trying to figure out drop rates. I'm trying to figure out, how many enemies we're realistically facing and what all we really need to do it. Now, with all of the number of enemies in there, which 90% of them, again, are going to be soldiers, plague spawns, and possessed, most of those enemies really aren't that strong. The Possessed are obviously the main threat. because they're fast. They have 100 HP, so they take 3 hits from our wonderful flanged mace here. However, the other two, they're not really all that fast. And the leper soldier is not really a major threat, I would say. The plague spawn, of course, is, because once you get hit with that poison, it's, I mean, you might as well take a berry juice or a bandage, because rip 30 health. It's going down, no matter what. And that ignores your armor, so I really don't see a good reason to use heavy amounts of armor on the weaker enemies there. But I thought about it. I thought about my weapon usage, and I was realizing that, you know, I'm using 4, 5, 6 maces or falchions or something like that for every single fight. And there is a bug next to me that needs to get the hell out of here. I hate summer. But anyways, I thought about it, and I'm like, you know, that's a lot of weapons. And specifically, if you're making flanged maces every single day, I mean, if you have to make 4, 5, 6 flanged maces, that's 40 to 50 to 60 wire that you have to grind up every single day. Now, granted, you can get a decent amount of wire in Tier 3 runs through all the various chests in there. So, I mean, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's not exactly a quick thing to grind up, either. Neither is the copper. Once you consider the fact that you have to go get the copper ore, then you have to bring it back, then you have to smelt it, you have to go get wood for the smelter. The leather is kind of minimal because, again, you have to go get copper and you have to go get wood in order to make your copper ingots. So between those two, you should get enough to get your leather. But of course, you have to process all of that. So it takes time to get all of that stuff. So I thought, okay, well, what can I do to conserve my weapon usage? The usage of all of my weapons. And obviously, I have more stuff stashed in the dungeon here, and we're here, so I'll go ahead and show you some of that. But I thought to myself, okay, so what can I do to alleviate my weapon usage? And obviously, the obvious thing to do would be to use weapons that don't require quite as many resources. And my go-to would have been the one-handed sword, but I already demonstrated in my first run that it's really inefficient against those guys because you can't two-shot the weaker ones and you can't three-shot the possessed because of the amount of damage the weapon actually does. Now, obviously, you can see I've got plenty of Tier 3 armor just stashed here. I've got some bastard swords and halberds stashed here. I've got more weapons and armor stashed over here, and I think over here I have, yeah, some more weapons, bitter tinctures, healing items, scrolls of terror, all of that stuff. But I thought to myself, okay, so what can I do? And I went to the top of the crafting list, and I thought, okay, well, what works? The club, now that Stutter Step has been nerfed tremendously, it's not completely gone, but it's nerfed to the point where your ability to Stutter Step with the weapon is dependent on the weapon's attack speed. The club is kind of pointless, and it wouldn't be good with these enemies because of their amount of HP anyway. Then I thought about the Carthill, and I'm kind of on the fence about the Carthill, but when I went and looked down further, you see the spade here, it doesn't have that much attack damage, and it takes nails and stuff to make, so it's like, I really don't want to make that. I'm not thrilled with the attack damage on the dagger either. It has some decent attack speed, but I'm not really thrilled with that. And honestly, with that resource usage, I might as well just be making one-handed swords instead. You know, because it's pretty close anyway, and I've already determined the one-handed sword aren't very good. So the Carthill is kind of all I'm left with. So the idea behind what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to use the flanged mace on the possessed to three-shot them, and I'm going to try and use the Carthill on the slower soldiers and plague spawns. Mainly, the idea is we can't stutter step with it because the attack speed is way too slow for stutter step now. But what we can do is we can hit, and then we can run and use the range to our advantage to get potentially 2 hits in before they can hit us back. So I am going to be taking damage regardless. However, food wasn't really a concern when I reviewed everything that I was doing. Food was... I had plentiful reserves of food. So I'm going to try and make this run a bit more efficient. That's the gist of what we're trying to do. We're trying to do this dungeon run a little bit cheaper than what we have been doing in the past. So, and I also kind of want to, depending on how this first room shakes out, I kind of want to get the raw damage numbers of the enemies as well. Yeah, there's not a lot of enemies in here, so I'll go ahead and take off my armor and see about getting the raw damage numbers. Okay. Come here, friendo. So the basic idea is we get a hit in, we move back, and then we get another one. So he only hit me once, and I still managed to kill him relatively easily. Now, unfortunately, the Carthill is a very weak weapon in terms of how much durability it has. We're not going to be able to use this a lot. We're going to need a lot of Carthills if we're going to be using them on all of the slower enemies. But with the addition of sneak attacks as well, this is actually working out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with that thus far. So I've got the base damage of the soldiers and plague spawns now. I'll go ahead and record those numbers later. And thus far, the dungeon is pretty empty. That's pretty amazing to me. Oh, okay, well here's a bunch of enemies. This is more what I was expecting, really. Yeah, how about you just spot me, and then I will head on out of here. And to a certain extent, we can even potentially use some of the benches and stuff here to our advantage, and kite enemies around them. Obviously, didn't work out there. I wonder why. I figured I'd have the attack range, but whatever. But yeah, we just have to be careful about how many enemies that we attract attention to, and obviously I don't want to fight the possessed with Carthills. They're just way too fast. Yeah, there we go. That's what I was looking for. So yeah, we have the ability to definitely get some good damage in with these Carthills, and still still not take too much back. So I'm liking the strategy thus far. This should definitely make the dungeon a lot easier to deal with if we use the obstacles to our advantage. Got possessed here, so I'll switch to my mace. Bam and bam. What I'm also going to go ahead and do is I'm going to employ a strategy as far as looting is concerned, where I'm going to essentially put a whole bunch of stuff in one body. I'm gonna loot every now and then, and we'll take stuff back. That way I don't have to have one big, massive, like, looting session at the end. Now here we have so many enemies kind of clumped together. I kind of want to, yeah, I'll just draw the possessed out. We'll deal with them. And I want to go back here. Gonna go ahead and heal up a little bit and switch to this. Now, unfortunately, yeah, this is a little bit of a situation where I'm kind of getting myself surrounded, and that's not good. So yeah, that wasn't a very good situation. But obviously, I think I've proven that the basic idea of what I want to do is going to be very successful once I get the actual execution of the strategy down. Okay, so we got more possessed. deal with them. That's no big deal. Gonna take some damage, but oh well. And then what else do we have here? Even more possessed. Jeez. Wow, this is just the room of the possessed. Wow. Okay, so yeah, thus far I'm happy with how this is working out, but of course this strategy is going to be very heavily dependent on how many cart fills I actually have to use, and then also how many maces and such this strategy actually saves me. Which is really the main reason why I'm employing this strategy, is because I need to save on maces and stuff. Oh, there's a Forsaken in there. Well, that is a problem as well. Alright, I'm gonna go ahead and take you out. I'm gonna back the hell up and try not to get stuck on too many... Oh god, lag. And we are going to switch gears. Obviously, the Forsaken are much more powerful enemies that require a different kind of strategy. And I'm trying not to use a bunch of... Ow, damn it. I'm trying not to use like a bunch of bastard swords and stuff in here. Oh! Damn it. Yeah, the lag was a problem there, and then also, I pressed the button to attack, and then it did nothing for a second, so I had to lift my finger off and repress the button, and yeah, that was unfortunate. But I think this strategy is working well, so now I'm going to have to revive. I'm going to have to head back here. It's going to take a little while, but I think this strategy will work well for us. I just need to execute it much better than I have thus far. Obviously, I don't have any practice with it, but I think we'll get there in the end. So I'm gonna call this an episode, guys. Hopefully this strategy works out well, and you can employ it yourselves. But we shall see. So I will see you guys next time. Till then, guys, take care.